So, about a month ago, the Young Turks released a video discussing two criminal cases in order to shed light on our two-tiered justice system in the US, one for the rich and one for the poor. I've left a link to the video below. You can take a look for yourself. Now, the first case I am not familiar with. The other case, the second case, is the Cyntoia Brown murder case. Now, I've said for years that the Young Turks are lying. I've looked into the Cyntoia Brown case a lot, and they are certainly lying about this case. Let's take a look.
There's a woman named Cyntoia Brown. 10 years ago, she was convicted of murder and sentenced to life behind bars. And the case is not as clear-cut as it sounds.
Oh no, in fact, this case is extraordinarily clear-cut.
She was only 16 years old, and unfortunately, because of her circumstances, was pushed into prostitution.
She voluntarily ran away from home and started shacking up with a homeless, abusive pimp and chose to stay in that situation instead of going to the police or returning to her family.
So mind you, she's a minor, she's underage, she's dealing with really rough times, and unfortunately is working as a sex worker.
These are rough times of her choosing.
But I want to be very clear about that, because if you're a minor, there is no such thing as being a voluntary sex worker.
Exactly.
It's called sex trafficking by law. By law. So if someone convinces you to become a prostitute when you're a minor, that's not on you, okay? And so you cannot have sex with minors. You can't say, well, to be fair to me, I was going to pay for it.
I don't know if it is technically and legally incorrect, but what about underage individuals who choose under no duress to engage in prostitution? I doubt that is called sex trafficking. If a 16-year-old person decided to have sex for money because he or she wants the money and will keep all the money, they are not being sex trafficked. Now, there might be a different legal definition. Somehow I doubt it, but colloquially we would not say that they are being sex trafficked if they're choosing to be a prostitute.
And her pimp, who does sex trafficking of minors, convinced her. So it's her fault. No, it's not her fault.
She's a minor, exactly.
She's a minor. And so that's why the case of Jeffrey Epstein and all of his rich friends who had sex with all those young girls, the prosecutors called them prostitutes. No, that is technically and legally incorrect. They were sex trafficked. And so she's brought into this house full of guns.
No, she's brought into a house of a man who has a gun collection, and he showed her 3 guns.
At the age of 16, so
Yes.
What happens next?
So let me give you the exact wording. So she was 16 when she killed a Nashville man who solicited her for sex, and now she must serve at least 51 years in prison before she's even eligible for release, and that's according to a recent ruling by the Tennessee Supreme Court. Her legal counsel was fighting the life sentence because as a minor, you shouldn't be tried as an adult, number one, but more importantly, as a minor, you're not supposed to get a life sentence.
Now, children are tried as adults for different reasons. In this case, it was because if Cyntoia had gone into juvenile justice system, she would have been released after only 3 years, and there would have been a murderess walking around the country free.
But you should also consider the circumstances in which she killed someone, because the man solicited her for sex. She did not want to have sex with him. He had weapons in the house, and when she said no to him, he reached for his gun, and so she feared for her life, and she alleges that she reached for her gun to protect herself. She shot him and killed him in self-defense.
She wasn't defending herself. She claims she was defending herself. She claims Mr. Allen rolled away from her and was reaching for something, and she feared for her life, so she shot him. But his body position clearly shows he was not reaching for anything.
Now, it's interesting because if someone like George Zimmerman follows Trayvon Martin in a gated community that his father lives in, provokes him, and then shoots and kills him, well, that's considered self-defense. But if a 16-year-old girl who's being sex trafficked defends herself from a man who's trying to have sex with her, well, that's murder and she should serve the rest of her life in prison. This is the two-tier justice system right in front of you.
No. As a minor, you are not supposed to be executed. You might think the life sentence is harsh, but as my understanding, Tennessee doesn't have a law restricting minors from serving life in prison.
They're like, oh, you're a 16-year-old who was sex trafficked? Who cares? We're gonna throw the book at you and try you as an adult. That'll show you. You're gonna serve 51 years in prison. For the guy who was having sex with you illegally in 2 different ways, you can't, prostitution is illegal, and obviously having sex with a minor is illegal. And you were worried that he was gonna kill you. Don't care. That was a good, I don't know what they viewed the guy who got killed, but somehow they viewed him as a legitimate citizen, and he was to be protected, and she is to be crushed.
No. Nobody is claiming Mr. Allen is a good person, but he is a murdered person, and that is illegal. The claim that she thought her life was in danger was unsubstantiated. This is what actually happened. Mr. Allen met Cyntoia and asked her to have sex with him for money. He proceeded to buy her food. He took her to his house where she ate the food, took a shower, and watched TV with Mr. Allen. Later, she got into his bed and pretended to sleep because she didn't want to have sex with him. He eventually got into bed with her, quote, woke her up. Then they both took off their clothes and fooled around a little. She said she didn't want to have sex with him, so he rolled away from her, and that's when she shot him. This is what she claims happened. Now again, she claims when he rolled away from her and he was reaching for something under the bed, and she feared for her life, so she shot him. However, the position of his body indicates that he was not reaching for anything. His body position indicates that he was sleeping peacefully, right? After she killed Mr. Allen, she then robbed him and went back to her abusive pimp. Now, the evidence against Cyntoia is made even more concrete when you look at the overall picture of her life. She ran away from home. She ran away from her parents and her siblings. To do what? I don't exactly know. I assume she wanted to use drugs and have sex, which would be harder to do if she were living with her family. Upon killing Mr. Allen, she already had a criminal record and a record of mental illness. I don't know how she met her pimp, a man named Cutthroat, but somehow they ended up together. He was extremely abusive of her. He sexually, physically, and verbally abused her. At one point, she claims he almost choked her to death. Eventually, he told her that she had to earn money for him or he was going to kill her, so she went and started hooking. She had every opportunity to go to her family, to go back to her family. She had every opportunity to go to the police and turn Cutthroat in. Cutthroat is clearly a danger to her. If she shot him and killed him, it could easily be considered self-defense, and she could have walked away from the situation. I can only conclude she didn't want a different life. She claims that all she did was hook, get high, and have sex. She had family. She could have had a relatively typical life. Mr. Allen told Cyntoia things like, I want to love you, and I want to be admired by you for the man I am, not for my money. So finally a man comes into her life who wants to treat her right. Nope, can't have that. Gotta kill him. Cyntoia Brown is now going to be freed later this year. Tennessee has recently changed the laws around those who are sex trafficked. They have come to the conclusion that the law is too harsh for those who are sex trafficked. I can agree that if you are being sex trafficked and you do something illegal to your trafficker, especially if like in self-defense situation, if it can be seen that way, if you take money from them so they don't have the ability to support themselves, you're defending yourself by trying to starve them or make their life harsher somehow. I can see that being self-defense. I don't think that Mr. Allen was a good person. He obviously was trying to have sex with underage prostitutes. You can draw your own conclusions from that, but we can't punish the dead. This really comes down to the state of Tennessee going crazy and allowing a murderous clemency. I would not be surprised if Cyntoia returns to a life of crime. She will be released in August of this year and be on probation for 5 years. I guess if you want to get away with murder, go to Tennessee and claim you were sex trafficked. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I've left links below to a documentary movie on Cyntoia Brown and to her court records. So take a look at those if you're interested in learning more about this case.